If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites. I'm Ben, this is Syya, and we are excited to have you guys back. This week, I'm taking something from this year's FIFA World Cup. You know, some people are watching it, some people aren't. You know, whether you like it, whether you don't, this is a story you guys need to know about. The Japanese fans are incredible. They are doing something that is amazing. At the end of every single game that they're at, en masse, their home games, every single fan, or at least the majority of them, have a plastic bag or two plastic bags, and they're walking around the stands and they're cleaning up after themselves. No other team is doing this. And the Japanese have been doing this for World Cups and for soccer matches for years. And it's a cultural phenomena of leave the world a little bit better off than where you found it. And I think that that's really the message that we need to explore today, is about what can we do as individuals, as groups, as society, to be able to take the world and sit there and say, okay, this is how I came into it. This is how I came into the situation, you know, whatever it is, and be able to sit there and say, how can I make this better? So Syya, I'd love to have you know on this.
You know what? Like, hey, I'm Asian. So first off, surprise, I'm Asian, everyone. But here's where I just love is that there's a thing about sportsmanship that we grew up as little kids, right? Learning, oh, it's not if you win the game, it's how you play the game and all that stuff. And I understand there is a competitive factor of like, yeah, you got to have that edge to win a game, right? That's the purpose. But there's so much more about the integrity of the audience, the integrity of the people around you and the community that you have that represents you. And so that's where I just love seeing the story about the Japanese year in, year out, how whether they perform well or not, they're still there. They're cleaning up after themselves. And they are thankful. They're grateful for the hosts. They say thank you.
Well, it's how you win. I mean,
Right.
yeah, there's winning and, you know, throwing up your middle finger against, you know, your opponents and taunting them and being obnoxious in the media, or, you know, whether it's corporate, whether it's soccer, whether it's anything, there's winning well, and there's winning with your head held high, and there's winning and slinging mud at other people.
Right.
And I think we all need to sit there and say, okay, how are we winning? How are we winning? And are we truly winning? Yes, we might have got the contract, we might have got the client, we might have beat somebody at their own game. But can you look yourself in the mirror? Can you look at yourself at the end of the mirror at the end of the day and say, okay, I'm proud of who I see. I'm proud of how I got here. You know what? I built this billion-dollar organization. Am I proud of how I did it, or did I step on everybody's fingers, toes, and heads along the way to get there? There's lots of different ways to be successful, and it's deciding how is success defined by you. And I think we need to think about that as people, as societies, as organizations, and sit there and say, how are we winning? And how does even though we won, how are we being perceived by those who lost, those we work with, the people we work against, and how is that affecting our brand if when we win, all we're doing is pushing other people down?
I mean, it is like that saying they talk about, there's graciousness in victory, there's graciousness in defeat, right? And I cannot help but apply that back to when I used to be on a sales team. We would work on huge RFP projects, right? And it would be 20, 40 people working in different areas to try to win a deal. And you can tell when the going is great everyone's a victor, everyone's like a badass, everyone's contributing in their own way and all that good stuff. But it's also when you're a losing team and you're like, what the heck just happened here? How did we lose this deal? Oh, well, Billy didn't show up, or, Mary didn't send this in. And it's interesting how cultures like the Japanese, don't get me wrong, 100%, they're doing analytics to figure out how did we lose, right? They're going to do a postmortem and figure out how to improve. But there is no finger pointing. There's no like so-and-so and bad mouthing. And I think that just shows amount of respect to achieve a certain level of success and be proud of each other and support one another. All ships rise with the tide. And what's that other saying is, there's a lot of leaders in victory, but there's no one in defeat or whatever that saying is. But it just kind of reminds me of that. And that's why, I wish there was more of that mentality here in the Western type cultures here, me being based in Dallas, Texas, and an American. Sometimes I wish there was a little bit more, communal thought on mutual success versus pure independence. Now, I'm not saying that you can't be proud of your independent achievements. What I'm saying is, though, I think sometimes there's too much of a, but I'm the one that made us win mentality.
Well, I think, to sum all this thing up, I think we need to look at we versus me. And I think we need to sit there and go, okay, we won, we lost together. Everybody was part of the victory, then everybody was part of the defeat. And I think we need to sit there and say, how do we win and lose together? How do we celebrate both? And how do we sit there as a group and sit there and say, what could we have done better to be able to make this more successful, whether you win or whether you lose? There should always be a post-mortem. There should always be the ability to say, how could we have done this better? How could we have elevated this and made this just a little bit better, either for us internally, for the customer, for the organization, or whomever? Because you know what? The world is all better off when we sit there and try to make the world a little bit better off than where we found it.
Oh, it would be so nice. And I almost feel like we're a little hippy dippy on saying that, right? Leave the world a better place into which we found it. But it's so true and it's applicable. I think it's a certain amount of selfishness on our part. I think this conversation, what it boils down to is, can you believe and think of yourselves outside of your own personal benefits in your own little universe, your own little solar system, galaxy, whatever space reference I can throw out there, and be able to say, hey, my little contribution and this little blue marble that we live on is beyond me. And, if we got into that mentality, by the way, just another thing that just made me think about this is, like we talked about the Japanese culture, it's always kind of ingrained. They don't have janitorial services in Japan. It's the student population. The students clean up after themselves. So they've already been ingrained at a young age to understand that if you're going to make a mess, you're the one that's responsible for cleaning up after yourself in general. I mean, that's just kind of the way they think. It would be kind of cool if we had that same mentality to actually, like, instead of like win a bat day, maybe here's a bag and help pick up trash. I can see where people will complain saying I'm not your paid labor, but I mean, again, it's just a goodwill gesture.
It all comes down to culture, and it all comes down to beliefs. So, Syya, I think that's a great place to leave this, is that we need to sit there and say, is this world better off when it's all about me, or if it's all about we? I'm Ben. This is Syya. We'll see you soon.
Hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Gnaw on This, Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at yourbrandmarketing.com or me, Syya, at innovationmediaenterprises.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. So see you next week for another episode of Gnaw on This, Business Bites.